Hi ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. Just putting over into a car park so I can hit the record button. That dangerous button that you don't ever press on the on the what do they call it? The Galileo telescope or satellite that they sent to Jupiter. They couldn't record because they couldn't press the record button because it was too dangerous. Otherwise they would have shown you evidence. Anyway, it's the 1st of September today. So yesterday was a new moon. Excuse the light's going to come and go here a little bit, and I'm driving and I can't really touch the phone, so you'll have to excuse me. Getting a perspective of the sun behind me as well, so all the Planet X community might be observing the sun as much as me at the moment. Is it the fake one or the real one? So it's the 1st, and like I say, new moon yesterday, so remembering that when we had the full moon on the last full moon, so 2 weeks before, it was 5 days, it was about 4 days before we had the volcanoes going off. Etna and Chevaluch, on the Kamchatka Peninsula, both in the Northern Hemisphere obviously, so we're obviously seeing this activity coming to the Northern Hemisphere. When you think about, about the timings of what I've given you just recently, because I'm talking about the I believe I said the 22nd of October, which is, remember, it travels 1/13 of its cycle slower than Earth's rotation around the sun. It's almost the same. But we're always catching up with it. Every year we catch up with it 1/13. You can probably work that out. But it appears that it's slowing down because we get to it at a place later every month, every year, 1 month every year, one calendar, effectively the averaging out one calendar month every year. And I said the 22nd of October. This is the point, I'm understanding, where we are closest to the planet. And we're going to be close. We're not going to be that close, I don't think. I mean, we're going to be pretty damn close, but we're not going to be that close. But we're going to be quite close to many of the objects orbiting in its tail, which means that the 22nd of October is a point of volcanoes and earthquakes likely to come in when the full moon is, which is going to be about the 28th of October, because this thing is amplified by the alignment of the moon, the sun, the earth and this object. It's these alignments which amplify the power. So the closest one, well, you've got two either side really, because you've got the, I don't know if it's going to be the full moon, I guess it's going to be the new moon, or around about the 28th, because it's the new moon now. So it's going to be the new moon about the 28th of October, and it's going to be the full moon about the 14th, 15th. Same, it's going to be the full moon on the 14th of September. It's going to be the full moon on the 14th of September coming up, the next big one coming up. But I say the next big one coming up because if we saw the volcanoes going off like 3 or 4 days, about 4 days before the last new moon, then it kind of stands to follow that the biggest volcanic activity with this alignment for this new moon is going to be 3 or 4 days after it, because of the way the alignment's working, because that would fit with the previous alignment we saw where it was 4 days before the full moon. Just think about not which side of the Earth moon is on, but the alignment it has with the sun and the moon and the earth and this other object. And if this other object is coming in, or we're coming into a flyby of this other object because it's effectively moving slower than us, so we're catching it up and we're going to go past it at the October the 22nd position. That's the exact alignment point. So we can imagine much bigger volcanoes and earthquakes on that alignment. But that alignment, as we approach, is not going to be completely perpendicular, or completely straight rather. It's going to be a little bit skewed, and that's why I'm imagining that we had this infamous 4 days before again. But I'm of a mind that that's not because of the two twin tail objects, as we've explored in previous videos. The twins, as Alex Lugian often calls them. I'm of a mind that's not because of that. But we don't know. We can just only, we'll have to see. I mean, it's the first day. I would imagine that we'll get a slight increase in volcanoes. We're still a fair distance away from it, getting closer to obviously the debris in its tail. But we'll get an idea of what happens on around about the 3rd, 4th of this month, whether we're going to get an increase in volcanoes in the northern hemisphere, which I'm imagining we will do. There's going to be a spike. It's got to be what we saw on the full moon just gone, and I imagine bigger, because actually the moon will, because it's closer to the sun, it's also closer to this object as well, because the object in question is still between us and the sun, so that we can't really see it because of the glare of the sun. We can certainly experience it electromagnetically in these alignments. Now you think about those objects in its tail. We've seen a recent account. I can't remember when it was, around about July. But some people saying it's a fleet of spaceships. Other people saying it's a. And don't get me wrong, we're going to get to the government shutdown, and we're going to get to the TR3B's that are suddenly on open display by the US government. We're going to get to all of that. Let's just think about what's scary about this specific passage that they're really concerned about. They're going to be concerned about those objects. Like I say, we just recently saw them. I think it was around July. They were in one of my last videos. You see I compare them in the thumb shots. It's like my penultimate video possibly, where you can see those, and you can see the same ones that Wrap the News put up in late December, the same time as the largest ever asteroid we'd ever recorded. The American government put it out, remember, 6 months after. And I know I keep repeating this, but it's so important, and we regurgitate this, and hopefully more people share this, and we start looking at this, and we start looking at the patterns. And I'm not going to put any overlays in this at all. Actually, I'm going to move the boat for another 3 days to try and get it a bit closer to where I'm going to take it out of dry dock, where I'm going to put it in dry dock, and do this work it needs on the hull. But let's think about these objects, what we know about these objects, what we know about the speed of, what they're following is, like I say, moving 1/13 of its rotation, complete rotation around our sun and the object and the dwarf planet that it moves around, in one cycle, in what we would consider, so it's basically, it takes more time. It takes a month longer, to do a complete cycle. And that means, in speed-wise, it doesn't mean that it travels slower than us, because its orbital cycle is basically looking like Mars, the same kind of orbital cycle of Mars, except the way it cuts through, it cuts past at several points, it crosses Earth's orbital track or pathway as it passes, as the two systems pass through each other. We've got bad traffic. As the two systems pass through each other, so it completes one orbital cycle slower than we do, but its orbital circumference is bigger than Earth's, which means that it's travelling slightly faster than Earth. So when we actually see it, we see this big cloud formation. For us, especially at this time, it just looks like a cloud sitting there. All the shots of it at this time. You remember when around about the 3rd of July, and we had the earthquakes in California, and we knew that this was going to be the cycle then that was going to affect the kind of northern hemisphere. And Alex Lujan put a shot up. Like I say, I can't do the overlay, but it's around my videos. I put it up. It's on the thumbnail of one of the videos around the July period, so you can see it and you can click on that, or you can go to Alex Lujan's channel, and he's got the full stretch and all the data there in full Technicolor, and it's really, really worth checking out. But you'll notice that was one of the few shots where you really get an idea of its speed, because as we went past it, in that aspect of its cycle, it appeared to be going in the opposite direction, so we could see how fast it was traveling. Because well, it's very difficult to say, but if you look at the orbital track of the, you know, enough of you have seen my pathway to see how it crosses in that kind of like that June-July period, as we've seen, you know, for the last subsequent years, and how it crosses in the December-January period. And then you've got that kind of passage where we've been, as it arcs over what we would call the northern hemisphere of our solar system, which it doesn't really do in the same fashion, but it kind of does. But as it does that arc, we've had this point over the last 5 or 6 years where there's one point in that arc where we cross each other, and only in this point of this cycle has this object done this. So it's all been quite a recent thing. It's only been going on since 2016. So you can imagine 2016 it was June, then it was July, then it was August, then it was September, and now we're coming to October. You know, that point of crossing. And that doesn't mean it's going to do it in November, because by that time this object is, well, you have to get, again, it's very difficult to describe that, the orbital mechanics of that, unless you actually go on to look at my videos, and I'm not going to go through that, because obviously I could put the overlays over that. But right now it's, you know, we're just looking at the pattern, and I don't truly know if we are going to see an increase in volcanoes around the 3rd or the 4th of September. But I can imagine that we're only getting close to this, and because of the skewed alignment that's going to come, and because of those, you know, the volcanoes, like I say, 3 or 4 days before the last full moon, we are getting an idea of where it's exactly where I'm expecting it to be. It's that exact alignment. Do a line and you'll see exactly, and you'll see, if you look at my model, you'll see, you know, run a line from the center of Earth through the alignment of where the moon is, or was, 4 days before the last full moon and 4 days after this new moon. There'll be the same kind of line, obviously. I mean, Earth's obviously moved another 2 weeks of its around on its orbital track around Earth, but then so is this object, or around our sun, and so is this object. So these objects passing us are travelling virtually the same speed, and we've seen various shots of them right where we're expecting them to be. And we've seen the speed they travel, we've seen them rolling in space. Wrap the News got them exactly. And so we know that these things, when they come and they land, if any of these do land on Earth, they don't just come crashing down at 40,000 miles an hour. That's not what happens here. They're slow movers. They're not going to punch through the mantle of our planet at all. They're going to plop down and land with a thud. We're talking about a speed that fast cars travel at. Not a lot more. At the most. You know, I'm sure there are going to be factors that are going to increase or decrease that one way or the other. But these things are slow movers. You know, it was different when we passed it on the other track, when it passed in, say, February. Remember, we had the big sighting on February the 14th, and then on February the 15th, I think it was those dates, it's around about those 2 dates, like 2013, do you remember? And then we had the sighting, and then the following day we had the asteroid over Russia, which came with a massive bang. That was moving. We were coming round, and that was cutting across our path. This is where we're travelling parallel. So it's different to a crossing. We're not getting a proper crossing here. We're just getting proximity here. But because of the low speed, we are, you know, anything that's close to us, that's moving at the same speed as us, that comes next to Earth, could fall into Earth's gravity as much as continue with its momentum that it has, that keeps it following its existing pathway behind this twin-tail object. So we don't know how close we're going to be. We don't know how close we're going to be. I haven't got those answers. We don't know what aspect of the tail we are going to be closest to. You know, if we're gonna overtake it effectively on the around about the 22nd of October, and we're getting closer and closer to the tail now, then it's somewhere between. It's going to be somewhere between, in my guess, somewhere between late September, somewhere between mid-September. Because remember, we had the earthquake. We had the big earthquake last year on the. We had the tsunami. You remember I made the video and I said oceanic anomaly is imminent, because we hadn't had any seismic data. We were coming up to the 17th of September, which was the mark where this thing shows up every 200 days. I'm not making that up. This is just this thing that happens. It's like, you know, the moon turns up and you're like, hey, and then it turns up again 30 days later, and you've never seen the moon before, but then it turns up again 29 whatever days later, and you're just like, hey, you know, you start thinking, that's a pattern. Could that be the same thing? Surely. Had to start thinking that. God, just keep throwing another story at it and creating another story, another crazy story, and then more and more volcanoes go off, and then you just keep going with the same story. Oh no, we've got to cover the Earth with nuclear power stations to stop the carbon dioxide that's spewing out of all the volcanoes when this thing goes by and causes massive excitement of the ions in our core, in our molten core, and that excitement causes expansion, and that expansion results in volcanoes and earthquakes. Crystal clear, absolutely crystal clear. We've just done it for too long, just watched it too much, watched the cycle go round and round. Everyone's just like, oh yeah, when's the next cycle? Nothing's going on, everything's totally normal. No nuclear power station split open. No one you love dying of cancer. Nothing is going on. Everything is totally normal. Nothing to see here. Move on to your next shopping experience. So it's all a bit like that at the moment, isn't it? And now we just hear that the government is shutting down. So they're pulling out they're getting heavy now, and of course this is a two birds with one stone kind of trick, isn't it? Because obviously they're putting the pressure on as if they're going to do this, they're going to shut government. You know how American government shuts down? They're saying they won't put the debt ceiling up anymore, that's it. You remember what Trump came in with, oh, he's going to change it all, and la, this was the end of this, he was going to shake it all up. And then suddenly it's just like he's now putting the debt ceiling up, government goes on strike like they normally do. Don't know, the American government just shuts down and says we're not doing anything unless you give us money, and then the debt ceiling goes up, and it's just like, okay, let's just carry on borrowing then. Let's do another round of quantitative easing where we just pump free money into the city, just raise our debt, just drive the cogs of credit in any which way we can, so we can lend more money. You know, whatever the system they're using, especially getting all these people into the investment and on the Bitcoin, it's all being done by dollars and all these fiat-based currencies ultimately that are buying into this, and all this movement of money. It's like high frequency trading. Imagine having £1 billion in an account, and then moving that money where you're making millions of trades every 2 seconds, because the shortest amount of time that you can hold a stock is 2 seconds. Minimum thousands of trades every second, every couple of seconds, effectively spread out in the most through these algorithms that make it look as if it's random and lots of people, so you can't preempt the kind of like the staging of market trends to stimulate the market, stimulate profits, stimulate losses. Whole load of hype. Most of the stuff you read on the news is just there to move stocks, to drive these crazy markets, to keep the dollar going absolutely crazy, to offset the mounting debt. You know, we're all into so many different stories, but the story at hand, really, right now, what it's all about is the asteroids that we're about to pass. That's what it is all about. And shutting the government down and doing their process. Obviously, Extinction Rebellion will likely do its big protest in October. Perfectly on cue. Couldn't play better into the government's hands. So they're going to push for their whole carbon story, and of course that's going to absolutely enrage in Britain the Brexiteers and all the right-wingers that think that aiding the nuclear industry, they've realised they blame the entire nuclear industry now on the left-wingers who have pushed this lie from James Lovelock, who's pushed it, that nuclear power is good, ignore all the volcanoes and everything, blame the whole carbon story on nuclear, on human beings, completely sweep under the carpet Fukushima and the massive increase in volcanoes, cover it up, earthquakes and volcanoes, cover it all up, and put all the energy into solving this, not into coming up with a real clean energy solution, but just feed that into a mechanism that we know will result in a saturation of nuclear power stations, which is what we've seen as a result of the carbon story. James Lovelock, right at the head of it. The one that created the whole Gaia theory, the theory that we all love. That, you know, if we look at Stephen Harding, a protege of James, if we look at James Harding, prodigy of Stephen Harding. Apologies, Stephen Harding, who's kind of prodigy of James Lovelock, and he was the one who upgraded for me the carbon cycle to a much bigger degree, where he explained it, and I obviously have. So I'm not trying to, because these people totally believe it, their intentions are totally good. It's just that they are getting money to say this, so they think that, oh well, that must be right, and so they go with this story, but they're not willing to look at the science of it. And well, some of them are, because obviously, you know, the whole GSM crowd is slowly but surely, the grand solar minimum crowd. So basically what's happened is, as we've gone into grand solar minimum now, and everyone, grand solar, ideal, isn't it? Because we can see in late December we are going to get a massive grand solar minimum. I don't think this system can get much closer than what it was last year, and if it does, you're going to be a month closer than what it was last year, and last year was massive. So how big is it going to be? How big is it going to be this year? Surely that's going to block out our sun. I can't imagine that thing can go by and swing by us without kind of blocking off our sun. So yeah, we are going to definitely get a grand solar minimum. Whether you can give us the grand solar minimum, extract any kind of understanding of orbital mechanics, bring it down to a thunderbolt, very possible. I mean, the shit that people believe at the moment, if they can actually believe when volcanoes are going absolutely crazy around them, and the coolest people you think you know, the environmentalists, are all shouting, nuclear, 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 but they don't even realise they can't even look at their own science, because they believe that they're wholly good, like Christian believes they're wholly good. And I'm not having a bash at Christians there, I'm just talking about the belief system behind the stupid notions that we have of good and not good. So we've got all the kind of like, we've got the Trumps on one side looking at all the kind of environmentalists who have decided to back this whole nuclear agenda, even though each and every one of them says, oh no, that's absolutely terrible. They're all completely in bed with it, with the support of this, by supporting this carbon story. When we can see that if we're going to blame the carbon dioxide on humanity and just gloss over and sweep under the carpet the whole nuclear stories. Look at Chernobyl, look at the fact it happened in 1986, look at the fact it happened at the same time as Krakatoa Tower and Kilauea both went off, round about the same time. Earthquake on the same day as when Chernobyl went off, the same day, right next to the fault line that it was on. And then we see the same thing with Fukushima, just when we get the flyby. And we will not look at it because it's against our religion. It's not, climate change isn't not a science. You can't call building nuclear power stations on a fault line a science. That's an act of stupidity. That's not an act of science. It's a total act of stupidity to back that and to sweep the carbon story under the carpet to protect that. Just because you think you're cool. Like John Lydon said, never trust a fucking hippie. No offence, but you know, I've always been considered to be a hippie myself, and I tell you what, at the moment it's just like, you can see, it's just like, they've created a polarised gap. Now when, you can imagine, when these protests come out in mass in October, and the government will pump it up because they will use this as the front, and then they will get the opposition who hate them because of this stupid carbon story, this stupid nuclear, pro-nuclear carbon story that's been so perfectly polarised by the Clinton-Trump campaign. You remember Clinton trying to make it illegal to be a climate change denier, that you could get locked up or sanctioned if you even say anything against the carbon story when volcanoes are going off. And then the whole Trump movement just coming in saying total bullshit. Both sides hating each other, both sides thinking, and if you talk against climate change at the moment, if you talk against Extinction Rebellion and say, listen, I just don't agree with the carbon story. I love the fact that you all want to save the world. I just don't think we've saturated the planet with nuclear power stations. All of them will turn around and go, oh, I don't want that. And yet there they are, en masse, lobbying. You can see every other radio and TV broadcast pushing the carbon story through this agenda. And yet individually, every last one of them says, oh no, well it's, or they'll stand behind the science when they can see their own scientists who came up with the claim originally have pulled out and said we were all bullshitted. The original members of Greenpeace, the whole fucking shaboodle, are all just turning around saying, guys, this is total bullshit. And that agenda has got Trump in. Now, how did they both know so meticulously, so well, to push two polar opposites in their campaigns? You ever thought that the sheepdog and the shepherd might be working together? Anyway, these things we're going to be very close to them, and the decisions that we're going to make now are going to be exacerbated by this government shutdown. Because whilst they're shutting down and looking like they're doing stuff, you know where they're going. Obviously, they're just trying to duck out during the passage, and I don't blame them at all, and I'm thinking about doing the same. You know, it's pointless trying to do something if no one really wants to look at this. Everyone just wants to go and protest against the carbon dioxide spewing out of Chevelluge right now, and the carbon dioxide spewing out sort of like out of Mount Etna, and the carbon dioxide spewing out of a 4,600 kilometre long run fault line full of volcanoes under the Pacific, running from the Kamchatka Peninsula right down to Hawaii, right down to where Kilauea last, you know, the big island on Kilauea. That whole 4,600 kilometre long run of underwater volcanoes also spewing out carbon dioxide. Not to mention the 29 new volcanoes in Antarctica, where most of the melt is happening on the Pacific Basin side. Not to mention all of the volcanoes on the Pacific Basin that are also going absolutely pop. And we're sweeping them all under the carpet just to try and please an environmentalist who absolutely will not let go of their carbon dioxide story. No matter how many volcanoes spew, no matter how many nuclear power stations pop, they will not let it go. So the Trump supporters hate their fucking guts. Excuse my French. And they hate the Trump supporters' guts. Cavaliers and the Roundheads, We've been around this cape so many times. Opposition and controlled opposition. Played with bullshit science. It's a religion, guys, just a bullshit religion. GSM, they're on one side of the Titanic, massive hole in the middle. What do? They all just jump straight over the hole and jump over to GSM, Grand Solar Moon. No one's willing to look at the orbital mechanics of what's going on. Everyone's too cool to even question it. You're a total and utter fascist wanker if you question. You're a Holocaust denier if you question the carbon dioxide story. You're hated, you know, I'm considered, oh Dave, you're just attacking your own. That's what I get looking at the carbon dioxide story. You're just attacking the good people, Dave. You've gone to the bad side, the dark side. All just belief. If you could only understand what I'm trying to tell you about belief and faith. Yeah, many of you sort of felt really quite attacked by what I told you, what I said in the last video about Christianity. But what I'm trying to make you understand is when you were born on this earth, you didn't have to pray to Jesus to be protected. You were given this body. It was a sacred gift to you. All I can tell you is you are so worthy of this body. You were born into this earth. You were born into this body. It is yours by divine right. You are enough as you are. You're good enough as you are. We all make mistakes, and we all have got to learn to correct some of the mistakes we make. And in the long and slow process of the many lives we have on earth, we raise our vibration and we evolve. We evolve the species of humanity. We evolve the souls incarnating in humanity. And we also evolve all of that which is trying to slow humanity's awakening down by pulling against us. And we drag it all forward. We drag it all forward in this long path of evolution. And so this is not new for Earth. This is not a new cycle. This is not a new journey. This is what we do regularly. The Christians, every 189 years, will scream out, it's the end of the world, and do this story. And this story just goes on and on and on. The only difference is here is that the level of technology is getting much higher. Sorry, I just noticed that I just saw a sign saying that my maximum recording time was reached, so I'm just going to continue with that, and we'll put those two together afterwards when I get back, hopefully. But what I was talking about there was how humanity, for one of the first times, is becoming neck and neck, and that where the technology has been feeding from is, as I'm understanding, from the oceanic orders that came from Mars that have been living on our planet, guising themselves as what we would call maritime law. That's their psychic channel. That's the psychic channel that is opened in our law courts when you enter into that temple, which is a temple to our maritime gods. You know, you step up to the bar, and beyond the bar is maritime law. And you come from your common land and you stand in the dock. You stand out of your sovereign rights. And it's not really a friendship. It's lordship, her lordship. But it is a relationship. And the intellectual level on each side is becoming equal for the first time in parts of humanity. Humanity is waking up, pockets of humanity. Obviously those pockets are have done deals with these sides for this intellectual property, which is what fed it in, but understanding that it was our bondage that secured. We agreed to go and have them as our gods in exchange for their intellectual property. And now that deal has been done, and we have had a whole age of being dominated. All our thoughts, everything have been dominated by their existence on our planet. They run the belief channels in your head. You don't know how to think beyond their mind prompts. What you think is your thoughts. I'm afraid so many of your thoughts have been chosen for you. You know, you are, apparently you're called wetware. We are called wetware. Software, hardware and wetware. And we run around like chickens in a pen, doing their bidding. And we can see what's happening now. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone with this big government motion. You've got their ability now to go off to their underground bases in kind of mid-September to October. Oh, they'll have their little meetings when they know there's no asteroids super close or anything else like that. But as soon as we start getting to the main hub, they're going to be in deep underground bases. And don't worry too much. These objects are very slow-moving objects. They're not like you've seen in the movies. These things come in and take out whole continents. They don't. They'll take out. If they land on a city, they'll take out an area of that city where it lands. The footprint of it will take out an area. Yeah, and that would be pretty devastating. But they're not fast moving, they're slow. So they're going to cause earthquakes, they're going to cause tsunamis. If they land. They might not land. See, this, as I was told from the very beginning, this is as bad as we allow it to be. Those big trumpeting, scraping noises you can hear, they are literally asteroids sliding down the shields that are protecting Earth, that were given here by our benevolent creators. Not the ones that are trying to sabotage and destroy this planet and try and get humanity to genetically commit suicide with nuclear radiation to wipe itself out and everything on this planet. I.e. the message, if we can't have humanity, no one can have humanity. And so America's finally coming clean about the TR3B's. Flying them all over the place for the change, letting the world see the power behind, the real power behind America, or a glimpse of the real power that America is at, where America is really at. Because they're giving Europe the option here. This is where the pressure comes, this is where the kick gloves kind of come off really. And this is where they start playing a bit more hardball. And they want this contract signed. They want all of Europe into a free trade deal. So Britain signs a deal with Europe, with America, after securing the same rights that Turkey has. More complex, but basically the same rights that Turkey has to bring in whatever they like into Europe. I can't remember the name of the system that that Turkey has with Europe. There's a special name for their relationship that enables them to trade, which is how this genetically modified food is now coming into Europe. That's the route it's coming in through this agreement they've got with Turkey. And so that's the way it can come in. It was what Theresa May was trying to set up with her deal, and now Boris is just going to come in with a lot more pressure. But what he's also going to do, he's going to polarise the entire country. You know, we have polar opposites going on at the moment, don't we? On every front. This is how they're doing it. This is how they play their games. I'm just going up to Stonehenge. Just coming up to Stonehenge. Busy traffic. Keep looking out for the TR3B's. But if you want to see those shots of the TR3B, third phase of the moon, he's just put some epic shots up. Oh, I love his videos. I absolutely love their videos. Well, you know, the two of them are doing it. Amazing. So there we are. So that's where we're at the moment, guys. Can't really say a lot more. Don't know what's going to really happen. We're expecting them all to duck out and go into their bunkers for this, especially Britain, the British government, because the British government is obviously the one that orchestrates all the dumping of the depleted uranium on countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and all that sort of stuff. They're going to be hiding because they have got karmic equations to deal with. Because you cannot come onto this planet and commit atrocity and not be karmically accountable. That was the only contract we came into this world with. This was very different to the contract that's being offered to you beyond this when you leave this realm. Beyond this realm, when you leave this realm, if you want, there's a higher realm that you can go to. Many of you have created into that realm, but you've not incarnated into that realm. So you've created a world for yourself for all your endeavours, but you haven't gone into that world, and there is a requirement from you to enter that world, that higher realm, for those of you who are not already in there. And most of you already are in there. But many of you haven't ever got into that realm yet, and many of you will have the opportunity of getting into this realm by the end of this life. And this other realm is there is a contract with that realm, and that contract is not Jesus. It's just simply peace. Your understanding that you understand why the requirement of peace to enter that realm. It works in a different way to this realm. Many of you will be given the opportunity to enter that realm at the end of this life if you're not too karmically imbalanced to enter. You know, if you get too attached to a story which is going to drag you down and destroy this world, that story karmically will not make it possible for you to join that world, because you will not be able to look at the people you love because of what you've done to them. They will not want to look at you. Be so careful with the story you're in at the moment. There's a lot of people will have a lot of hate for you, for me. You know, I'm willing to die for what I'm doing. I knew from the very start that if I started talking about this, I'd put my life on the line. You know, that's what I offer. That's what I offer. The risk that I take, speaking my truth. You know, we are the frontier here. YouTube now is it's going now because they're destroying all the algorithms, they're burying all the information. The channels are all going to start getting shut down. It's all on its way out. Although they won't shut the internet down because it's too vital for their kind of window on us. But we're in it now, aren't we? We all know that. You've got to do what you've got to do now, and go where you've got to go. Be what you have to be. Understand that wisdom only comes through the mouths of those who have the courage to speak it. So to terrible thing to get to the other side and realise you haven't done the things you wanted to do and said the things you needed to say. And then you suddenly get to the other side and you suddenly realise you've been on the wrong side of the fence all your life. Attacking the people that were trying to help and change things, but you've just been belittling them and hating them, making them feel like a piece of shit for doing what they know they had to do. Not listening, and constructively listening and looking at everyone's argument, putting it down on a piece of paper and working through it with them, helping them to see what they're saying so they have a chance to give them a dignified exit on their own strategy so they can come to a place without belittlement, to understand the dynamics of what they themselves are talking about. Help them understand what they think they believe, not just patronise them. And I know that last video when I talked about Christianity, I'm not trying to patronise you for your beliefs or your faiths. I'm just trying to help you understand that in the eyes of God, you are more than enough. It's already your body. You know, sometimes you need to clean out so much of the conditioning that's gone on in your human state, that's set up a lot of different ideas and beliefs. So you have to do a bit of house cleaning in your own head sometimes. Audit your mind, audit your belief system, clean it up a little bit, do some qualifying questions to yourself. You know, if we get a bit harsh, and I know it is a bit harsh, and this is harsh, there's harshness on every part of humanity. Harshness. There's a part of humanity which is beautiful, and there's part of humanity which is really struggling. And it runs in all aspects, whether it's blacks, whether it's whites, whether it's girls, whether it's boys, whether it's men, whether it's women, whether it's different nations, different religions. There's good and bad in all things. You know, I'm not talking about walking away from your faith. What I'm talking about is blind belief. Blind belief in something without needing to really come to some holistic place within yourself which is more than just a cold belief system. Can you imagine a priest who's a paedophile? Believing because of his actions that he is good, that he can do all of that because he's a Christian. You're not trying to take away from all the beautiful Christians out there. You know, just hearing the leader, I can't remember his name now, the Filipino leader, you know, of the Philippines, and him talking about how every, you know, an RT reporter asked him questions. And I know this enrages so many people, but how many people who, when they heard that, felt anger towards, you know, someone slating their faith when he said, well, she said to this RT reporter, asked him, he said, what was it like? It must have been terrible, you know, knowing that you were kind of like sexually assaulted by your teacher in front of all the other kids. And he just turned around and he said, oh no, he said, every child in my school was sexually assaulted by an American Catholic priest. Every child. Institutionalized paedophilia. Now just cold belief. If you can just turn around, Jesus loves me, I'm saved. I love Jesus. There you go. I've said it. I'm in the club. How do you feel about that? Do you feel anger? That he would say something that would cause so much hatred towards the Catholic Church? Do you feel anger towards the priest? Or do you just feel pity for the children? What does it stir up inside of you, that comment? Are you angry by it? Are you saddened by it? Do you know in your heart, it's absolutely true, that that's what's happening in so much of a really bad side of Christianity. A side that you'd really like to clean out. A side that you would like to see the end of. And only beauty and love within that institution, not this paedophilia. But both are shouting out Jesus. Both are shouting out, I believe. Is that enough? Is that enough? Job done. You go from here. God says, yeah, lovely, super. You're a good Christian because you believe in Jesus. You've raped all these children, traumatized all these people's lives, caused this wake of hate which has just carried this terrible wave of what to call it, hideousness. Thousands of years, passing it on one onto the other, onto the other, onto the other. And if you don't believe, you're a climate change denier. I does not believe. You question carbon dioxide. Nazi! Belief systems, guys. We're being plagued with belief systems. It's humanity's weakness, isn't it? And we gotta get past it. So anyway, they've got the kit gloves out now. They're gonna really try and force us all into this deal with America in this real complex trade deal. And if Europe doesn't drop the backstop, it's handbags at dawn. Handbags at dawn. Proper bitch fight. That's what they're talking about. Each side polarized, like an angry Christian. Just not interested in the volcanoes going off at all. Just locked on to their carbon dioxide story. Anyone who questions it is a Holocaust denier. Ciao.